It's a nice sunny day here. My Eloise Shuttler, the storyteller, and I've come to tell you another story about what's happening if you're on a quarantine. Uh, I had a wonderful Saturday this past week. This is now Thursday, it was Saturday, and it was all thanks to my friend Thorny, who lives down in North Carolina. And we've been friends, one of those lucky things in your life. We've been friends since we were in high school. And I called her to have a chat. And she told me about how happy she was because she had just had a visit with her son. And I said, how could you do that? You can't invite anybody into the property where you live. She said, no, but he came in through a gate and I met him on my side and he stayed on his side, parked his car, stayed on his side. We had two chairs on the grass with the fence in between us, and we had a great conversation. It was. So she said, you haven't done that? And I said, well, no, I didn't know anything about it. So I sat down and I thought about it that night. And finally I said to my daughter, I know about something that we ought to be doing. Having Jimmy and his family come over here and we could try sitting outside on the porch and having a visit with people who are alive in front of us. I love Zoom. I really do. And I'm so appreciative of it that we've been putting the family together almost every week, and we talk at least 30 minutes or so. Well, the only thing about Zoom is I might as well tell you the truth. I'll just interrupt 1 minute. I struck my hair and it has slipped out and I can't figure out how to get it back. So just ignore it. Just don't even think a thing about it because every time I touch it, it goes the wrong way. So as I was saying to her, we need to find out how we can have a family meeting, a safe family meeting outside. So we called my son, and on Saturday, he was bringing his wife and his daughter over, and Karen said, I'll sweep the deck, and we can go out on the porch. We can go out on the porch, Mom, and I'll fix it so that we can do it. Won't be any trouble. And she did that. It was just great. She assembled the usual old chairs that we have out there, and she paced them, with the correct amount of pacing between. And so when they came through the backyard, they came down the driveway and came in through the backyard, we were being extremely careful with ourselves because that's how we want to keep it, as I'm sure you do too. And they came through and we were all laughing. Well, now what happened before they came was that as I went out there to look around to see how much space we had, be sure it was going to be okay, my neighbors had come out into their backyard, and our yards go together. They're the backyard for me, and I'm the side yard for them. It's a fence in between. You know how they divide these properties up. And they were out on their patio in the sunlight, enjoying themselves. And so I waved, are you outside finally? And we yelled back and forth with a little visit. I hadn't seen them in a long time, months, in a long time. And as I was coming back to check out this other chair that I was worried about whether it was in the right place, there was a group gathering on the deck side of my house, also across a fence. Trees in between, a fence, a distance, but I could hear what they were doing. It was a group of teenagers, and they were having a party. They had on their masks, and they were playing their music, loud. It sounded great. Who's going to say anything about that? But one of the girls called over to me and said, are you going to be out there? And I said, well, yes, I am. I'm really excited. My family's coming over, and it's the first time that they've been here. Oh, Mrs. Shuttler, we'll turn our music down a little bit so you don't have to yell at each other. Was that not sweet? It was wonderfully sweet. So she did that, and we were ready when my family got there. Karen had made popcorn, and each person had their own bowl. We were not, eating food out of the same bowl. They had a separate bowl. And then, but they had brought what they wanted to drink. They brought it with them. It's just the way that you think about things, isn't it, that makes it perfectly well to do it, to have it. And we talked and we talked. We talked about movies, things we'd seen, about what we'd heard on the television, news programs we talked about. We talked about movies, if we particularly liked them. And I just admitted that I was now watching old space movies, things that I had always turned my nose up years ago, but now I found them hysterically funny. So that was good. I'm in their group now. We know that we have the same 7 things to talk about. That was a good conversation. It was just great. And they didn't know that about me. And I didn't know that they didn't know, or that they would appreciate having somebody that knows, especially my granddaughter. That was nice, very nice. So we ate our popcorn. We had our cool drink to enjoy. And it was just nice. My son looked over and he said, I haven't been out here to just sit and talk for a long time, Mom. That's true. You have to keep in touch with the places that mean things to you, I think, anyway. So there we were out there for about an hour. And, we laughed. I love that when we were together and we laughed. And the one person or thing that was there that we hadn't expected was our cat. She takes care of herself in the quarantine. She picks a safe place under something and stays there and watches you. You know that you're being watched. And so she had appeared in order to be part of the group. As I thought about it later, sitting outside reminded me of sitting out with my grandmothers. This was in the 40s. The war was on, all those things. But my grandmother, who was my mother's mother, had a wonderful screened-in porch on the front of her house. And in the summer, when it was so hot, she put a couch out there and a rug on the floor. And she always had big groups of cookies and things and a big pitcher of iced tea. Now that was really good. And she lived, not too far from the sidewalk going up and down 7th Street. And when she was sitting out there, people would be walking back and forth to home or wherever they were going. And they'd stop and come down the walkway, knock on the thing and say, hey, you want to talk for a minute? Hey, yes, I do. Have some tea. And they'd sit down and have a little Southern conversations. My other grandmother, my father's mother, was a little more formal, but she was sitting out on her front porch, and she loved it. And ordinarily, if you were up there, often I came home from school, but before I went to home, I would sweep on by 3 blocks, just adding 3 blocks, and sit down and talk to Nanny for a while if she was outside. I picked up some good stories from her by sitting with her, of the courtship with her husband. He got so angry that she said no, that she threw the diamond out in the grass. And the next thing you know, he was down on his knees looking for it, but he found it and they got married. Those things are wonderful, and if there were no people around to talk to them, they were readers and they read the newspaper or a good book, and they just listened to favorite radio programs. While we were sitting outside, there's a tree right next to the wall that's around it. And it's been there for 50 years, that tree. And two sleek black crows must have smelled what was in the birdseed feeder. And they came swooping down, no interest in us whatsoever, trying to take their turn to get some of the seeds or whatever they were after. It was fun to watch them. You don't see nature at work if you're in your house quarantined. No. And it was absolutely wonderful. This was just really getting back to me as I sat out on my porch and felt the breezes and smelled the grass and looked around and realizing that there was weeding to do, but there were flowers blooming and we were in nature. It was a good feeling. Now later, when I stepped outside to pick up the mail, I noticed something I hadn't noticed before. Well, I don't really pay too much attention because I don't go out there much, but there were two canvas chairs, comfortable canvas chairs, football chairs that have arms on them, and they were sitting on the yard of the house directly across from me, across the street. And they were up a little on a hill, and there wasn't a porch in their front yard. And so they had set them with correct distance. They weren't there then, with correct distance, and they were ready. And I thought, well, they must be counting the dog walkers and waving to people and having a loud talk if they couldn't get any closer. And I thought to myself, you've got a couple of those chairs in the basement. You ought to bring them up. And then you can wave to people when they pass by your house. And you can check out the dogs. And you'll be more part of the world. And that's what it's been for me. I felt a little removed from the world. But there are ways to find out how to go by the rules, protect yourself, take good care of yourself and your families, but you can still see the people. Have fun. Have some fun. I'll see you next week.